In episode 7, Firecracker's little plan on separating Homelander from Sister Sage works. Because when Sister Sage shows up at Vought Tower for their brain trust meeting, which is really just between her and Homelander, she's surprised. Because not only did it start quote-unquote early, but Firecracker is there, and so is Ashley, giving them a rundown on everything Vought related. Once Homelander kicks Ashley out of the meeting, though, Homelander starts to dress Sister Sage down. I mean, after her performance at Tech Knight's place, it's got Homelander thinking that maybe she's not that great. Homelander is also able to find Billy Butcher's bugs that he had Huey plant. So he knows that Billy Butcher probably knows everything they talked about, which means that they still haven't caught the leak. They killed Cameron Cole, but the leak's out there. Who is it? That's Sister Sage's job. And she tells both Homelander, well, she really just tells Homelander. She has no interest in talking to Firecracker. But she tells Homelander that they're continuing to look. It gets to the point where Homelander tells Sister Sage that he and Firecracker will find the leak, which Sister Sage does pull back on, but the decision has been made. And it just so happens that the leak, the A-Train, is outside the door listening in on their conversation, so he gets a little concerned. He decides to follow Sister Sage because the last thing that Homelander said to her was, "You just focus on the shooter and make sure he's ready for the 6th. And A-Train has no idea what exactly Homelander was talking about, so he follows Sister Sage, and he sees her pay off a shady character. He takes some pictures of it, and then he hands him over to Mother's Milk at the Flatiron building. A-Train's convinced that whoever this random guy is going to be the Lee Harvey Oswald. So Mother's Milk tells Huey, Starlight, and Kimiko, I say we go pay this guy a visit and see what's going on. And that's when Billy Butcher walks the door. Now, all they see is Billy Butcher, but Billy, of course, is with Kessler. And Billy has come to tell them about what's going on with Dr. Samir. The fact that he isn't dead, the fact that Billy kidnapped him, and the fact that Billy cut his friggin' leg off in order to get the virus. But he's decided that he can't do that. He just doesn't feel right about that being his lasting legacy. And the whole time, Joe Kessler's trying to convince him that he actually does want that. But Billy just says, no, I don't want that much blood on my hands. So what I figured was Dr. Samir could use a little bit of help. And that's when a very pissed off Frenchie walks the door. He didn't want to be released from prison, but Mallory pulled some strings. And his role is going to be to help Dr. Samir figure out how to get this virus so it's not as contagious, so that they can kill both Homelander and Newman. After all, if there's one guy that knows how to cook up a concoction, it would be Frenchie. So Mother's Milk tells both Frenchie and Kimiko to go over with Dr. Samir while the rest of them go and pay this shooter a visit. But Mother's Milk, he's not going. After his little stay in the hospital, Mother's Milk's had some time to think, and he's not right for leading the boys, so he gives it right back to Billy Butcher. And there is pushback from a couple people, i.e. Starlight, but Mother's Milk's mind is made up. He's not leading the boys. In fact, he's not even going on this mission. Instead, he's going to talk to Monique. While everybody heads out, he heads over to Monique's and he gives her $10,000 in cash, 2 tickets to Belize, and says, your flights leave tonight. It's not forever, it's just till everything blows over, but I want you guys to be safe. But Monique doesn't like that plan at all because he's not coming with. She's able to convince him that they should all leave together, and he agrees. So the next day, Mother's Milk was planning on leaving with Janine and Monique to Belize, never to be seen again. As for Huey, Starlight, and Billy, they head over to where they think this shooter is living. The whole time, Billy is battling Kessler in his head, but when they get into this guy's apartment, it's a mess. They are, though, able to find plans for January 6th. That's when the president's supposed to be sworn in, and that is when they're going to kill the president. But as they're looking over this Dealey Plaza type scheme, they hear something coming from one of the closets, and they go to investigate. And there's a girl just in there, and she looks like she's in rough shape. She actually recognizes Starlight right away, and they tell her, we're going to help you out, don't worry. But then she pushes Starlight back, she slashes Huey's hand up pretty good, and she takes off running. And they all, of course, take off running after her. But the thing with this girl is, she's a shapeshifter. She starts throwing pieces of her skin off, and she touches a woman as she's leaving the building, and she's able to take her form. So when everybody piles out in the street, they can't find this person because they don't know what this shapeshifter looks like, and unfortunately, they're shit out of luck. When the dust kind of settles, Starlight sees the condition of Huey's hand and says, "Go to urgent care." And she's willing to come with him, but Huey says, "No, don't. Just go back in, get the plans for January 6th, and I'll meet you later." The thing is, Huey doesn't go to urgent care. Instead, he goes to visit Newman and plead with her not to do this. And it's a valiant effort. I mean, he makes the case that he knows she's not this person. He even brings up the internment camps that Homelander and Firecracker are planning on putting people in, but Victoria Newman is steadfast that this is the plan and this is a sacrifice that needs to be made. And Huey just has to walk out of the house before she pops his head. Now, while all of this is happening, you've got Mother's Milk back at his house trying to pack for Belize when he gets a visit from the A-Train. The A-Train was camped out at the shooter's house, and he saw Billy and Starlight and Huey, but he didn't see Mother's Milk, and he found that really weird. So he paid him a visit at his apartment, and what he found was Mother's Milk with a ticket to Belize packing. The two immediately get into it about how Mother's Milk is taking the easy way out, and Mother's Milk saying, "Well, this is what I have to do because this never ends." And that's when the A-Train gives Mother's Milk a harsh reality. That if he thinks he's escaping all this by going to Belize, he's fooling himself. Because they'll find him. They find everybody. And unfortunately, Mother's Milk knows that the A-Train is right. So he puts his bags down, and he figures out how to put an end to all of this. And A-Train desperately wants to put an end to all of it because he knows that eventually the quote-unquote leak is going to be discovered, and Homelander's going to know that it was him. And in fact, as soon as Homelander was done with Sister Sage in the morning, he and Firecracker got to work on trying to find out who the leak is, and they were able to find Webweaver. And they know that Webweaver was kind of a leak. He admits to telling Billy Butcher what he wanted to know, but Webweaver annoys Homelander, and Homelander, he's got a short temper, he ends up killing the guy. Homelander's Billy Butcher issue, though, is becoming untenable. He needs to do something about it. So he calls in the Deep. And he tells the Deep and Noir, go to the Flatiron building and put an end to Billy Butcher and his little crew. And the Deep is definitely in the headspace to kill. He had a little bit of a lover's quarrel with his girlfriend. I'm talking about that octopus. And he ended up killing her. Didn't know the Deep had it in him, and you hate to see young love die, but the Deep definitely has violence on his mind. So he, along with the new Noir, go over to the Flatiron building and they wait for someone to show up. And after a little bit, in walks Billy and Starlight discussing the case, and they're a little surprised the Deep is there. And Billy even tries to tell both of them, "I'll let you guys live if you just leave," but of course they're not going to do that. And that's when the new Noir goes after Billy, the Deep goes after his old friend Starlight, and after a little bit, it's not looking good for Billy or Starlight. In fact, at one point it's so bad that it looks like Billy is going to die, and he just says aloud, "Kessler, do whatever you did to Ezekiel, now." And while Kessler doesn't answer that call, the A-Train does. He runs in, he knocks over the Deep, it gets the new Noir's attention, and it shocks the hell out of Starlight and the Deep for that matter. Because the Deep had no idea that A-Train never liked him. And the Deep can't believe that A-Train was the leak. But with A-Train and Starlight, along with Billy, and Mother's Milk even shows up, they're able to take care of the new Noir and the Deep. They don't kill either of them, though. They just tune them up really, really good. Then they get at the Flatiron building before more soups show up. When the Deep and the new Noir tell Homelander that A-Train was the leak, he is really, really disappointed. He never had any inkling. And when Sister Sage shows up, he confronts her about it, saying, "How did you not know that A-Train was the leak?" But she's actually pissed off, because sending over the Deep and the new Noir was never a part of the plan. And in fact, it just screwed over her plan. She tells Homelander that she knew that A-Train was the leak. He was the perfect person to send false information through. But now, after what Homelander and Firecracker have done, that's no more. They're not going to be able to have that advantage. And while logically it all makes sense, Homelander is done. He fires Sister Sage on the spot, which she laughs at, saying, "Yeah, good luck trying to get your little plan enacted without me." And she walks out. And as she's walking out, she actually passes both the Deep and the new Noir, where they learn that they're Eskimo brothers, because while one was having sex with lobotomized Sister Sage, the new Noir was having sex with the smart Sister Sage. So they have that bonding experience. Of course, at this point, everyone is looking for A-Train. And A-Train, the first thing he did when he left the Flatiron building was run to Ashley's office to let her know, "We got to get out of here. We got to leave." Initially, it did seem like that was the plan, but Ashley says, I can't. I can't leave. But she's also not going to rat him out. She's not going to say where he's going. In fact, she actually reminds him as he's leaving, take the tracking chip out of your arm so they can't find you. As for Billy, Mother's Milk, and Starlight, they just headed to a local bar to blow off some steam. Starlight actually gets recognized in this bar, and some rando comes up and grabs a picture with her, but for the most part, they're left alone. When Mother's Milk goes to step outside and call Monique and tell her that they're not going to Belize the next day, it's just Annie and Billy alone, and she asks him, who's Kessler? You kept saying, Kessler, do what you did to Ezekiel. But Billy plays dumb, saying, no, I don't know what you're talking about. After a little while at the bar, though, they all take off because they get a phone call from Frenchie that things with Dr. Samir did not go the way they planned. They gave Dr. Samir everything he needed, and he, along with Kimiko, just kind of waited for the virus to be ready. And during that time, Kimiko and Frenchie did end up making up. They made each other feel better about their faults of the past. But after a little bit, Dr. Samir said, oh, okay, no, it's ready. You're right, it worked. And then he stabs Kimiko with the virus, and he's able to escape. And Frenchie jumps into action to save Kimiko, but in order to do that, he had to cut her leg off. So he calls everybody over to their location, and now the issue is they have to get the virus out of this chopped up leg, which Billy has the utmost confidence Frenchie will be able to do. When Billy takes off, he heads back out to the bar, where he, along with Joe Kessler, are sitting there drinking, and they're watching a Christmas special with Ryan from Vought. This special is aimed at kids, and the whole message is, if you think your parents are anti-soup, call this number and rat them out. And that never sat well with Ryan. He's had really conflicting feelings. One of the contributing factors to this is a Christmas present that he got from Billy that is just a picture of Billy, his dog, and Ryan's mother. It's had Ryan thinking a lot about family. So as they're filming this special and it's live, Ryan gets up and says, no, I got to stop this because this isn't cool. What we're talking about, telling on your parents, this isn't what my mother would have wanted. And while his father watches on, Ryan says, my mother would have always wanted me to tell the truth, which is why. But then he stops himself and says, I'm sorry. And he walks off. And Billy, watching this go down, looks at Joe Kessler and says, that's why I have faith in the kid. Unfortunately, then Billy collapses on the ground. Around the same time, Annie meets back up with Huey, and he tells her, I didn't go to urgent care, I went to Victoria Newman's, and he explains his thinking on it. She doesn't really care. The two end up actually hooking up. It's hot, it's steamy, and it's very satisfying for Stewie. You can see it in his face. But in the middle of the night, Annie wakes up. She gets up out of bed, she goes over to the safe. She unlocks it, and she takes the files, because that's not Annie. That's the shapeshifter. The woman that took the selfie with Annie in the bar, that was the shapeshifter getting Annie's DNA so that she could turn into her. And then later on, when Annie went to the bathroom, she just knocked her out. Annie is stuck, chained up in a random building, having no idea where she is or who has her. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel and subscribing to my Patreon. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought it sucked. If you left a comment, I don't get back to you. I usually don't check the comments unless they're like a super comment. Also, if you don't see the next video up on the end screen, not to worry, it'll be up in a day or two.